Welcome to the Sarno Music Solutions Breakdown, brought to you by Sarno Music Solutions, producing the finest musical instrument audio gear designed and hand-built in St. Louis, Missouri since 2003, and Blue Jade Audio, St. Louis's primary audio mastering service since 1999. This week, Brad is going to share some of his knowledge on the unmistakable guitar tone of Jerry Garcia. I'm back here today with my friend Brad Sarno. Always a pleasure to have you. How are you today?
Doing well, Rob. Thanks.
Today I'm going to give you a tough one because I know that you could go for hours on this. I've heard you go for hours on it, but we're going to talk about some guitar tones and specifically Jerry's, how it changed over the years. It definitely evolved. But can you give us your brief description of the evolution of that tone and how he got it?
Wow. Okay.
Yeah, good luck.
Yeah, right. Well, let's see. If we go back to the 60s, I guess you could kind of say he had a kind of a thicker Gibson tone, oftentimes a single coil, but sometimes a humbucker, and big, loud Fender twin amps. And it was just a meaty, rich tone. Um, by the by about 70, he started to gravitate towards Stratocaster tones, single coil, more country, clear, sparkly, articulate tones. And that became his sound, still with the Fender amps, the loud Fender amps. Um, but the fidelity kept going up, and they started using Macintosh for louder, cleaner power. He started playing more custom built, uh, high grade, bright, clear guitars by Doug Irwin. Um, and in the mid later 70s, he dabbled with the Travis Beans, which are also very bright, clear,
Oh, yes, they
almost,
are.
almost pedal steely sounding
Yeah.
guitars. And then a couple years by the end of the 70s, he had these bright Irwin sounding guitars with pickups that he would set to single coil. So it really became a very high fidelity, Fendery kind of approach. Lots of bell tone clarity and audiophile, just pristine presence. But being Jerry, he would also just blast the hell out of it and play it the whole rig like a guitar amp, and still could get dirty with it. But it had a very distinctly sparkly tone, and I would say by 79ish, 78 or 79, his tone was pretty much etched in stone. He
That
he changed some things, but that was it for the duration for the
I,
most part.
I guess the next big thing would have been when he changed and brought in some MIDI in the '90s. Would have been really the next big stepping stone in his tone.
Right, right.
You mentioned the amp, and you mentioned the guitar, and you mentioned the speakers. But what about effects? And I know that there had to be some in there. I know you design effect pedals, and some of them are based on some of Jerry's stuff, and some aren't. But it seems like there probably would have been a lot of effect pedals involved as well. Yes? No?
Jerry was a minimalist with pedals. In the early 70s, he used a wah wah. He discovered the auto wah in about 76, 77, I guess, the Mutron. And then he wrote a bunch of tunes that are just distinctively tunes. And then he added distortion, and then he added a phase shifter, and then he added some echo, um, added an octaver. And so which is still a pretty basic palette of pedals. And he would kick them on, in the appropriate times. Um, but for the most part, the Jerry sound was not a pedal based thing. It really was a simple guitar to preamp to amp to speaker thing.
That's really interesting because, as you know, and we're going to talk about it in another episode, there's this whole subculture of hobbyists out there who are, home guitar players, if you will. They're striving for the Jerry tone and getting the right axes and the amps and all that. And from what I read, it seems like pedals are a really big deal to them, and maybe sometimes they're a little off the mark with that. Then, yes.
Well, I don't know about that. Pedals are fun, and there are some tunes that absolutely call for a certain pedal effect. And so,
You
you,
mentioned the
you,
Mutron before. Name a song that really would have been there in. Can you?
well, estimated profit, fire on the mountain, um, those really stand out as just distinctively Mutrony
Got to have it
tunes.
to get that
Shake,
sound.
Shakedown Street. It's just that Bwomp Ottawa,
Right on.
and it was just the perfect Jerry effect. It just fit his style perfectly.
And of course, the fingers.
Jerry was. It's about the fingers. What a master. Yes.
Right on, man. Well, I got to tell you, I really appreciate you giving me the short version because I know how hard that was for you.
So little time.
It's so much to talk about.
That's
But
right.
in all seriousness, thank you for giving some people a little more clarity on that. Maybe we'll get back into that in a little more in depth at another time. But I really enjoy having you on here every week with me, and I'm looking forward to some more in future episodes. So, as always, my friend, thank you for being here.
Thanks for having me.
All right, take care.
All right. See you, Rob.
Okay, and